Continuing at the top of page 61, be sure to Control-D deselect, save if you haven't saved. Our next mission is to select this coral and move it up here. What we'll do is we'll use the fact that the area around the coral is white to help us select the coral itself. It's quite common to use the negative, the other stuff, to help select the thing you want to select. So what we'll do is we'll use the rectangular marquee tool to click and drag and draw yourself a marquee around that coral. Then I'll swap to my zoom tool, Z, and zoom in and get a good look at what I just selected. Once here, I'll switch to the magic wand tool underneath the quick selection tool, and I'll check that my tolerance is set to 32. And I'll come over to my tool options and be sure that it says subtract from selection. Click on that to subtract from selection. Now when I click with my magic wand tool, it will remove pixels from the selection. You could also hold down the Alt key to do that same thing temporarily. Now my magic wand tool has a little negative sign, minus sign next to it, which means that when I click here, it will remove those pixels from the selection. So now I will zoom out, Control-0 to zoom out, go back to my move tool, click and drag the coral up to about here. Just for the heck of it, I'll do Control-H to hide the marching ants. I can nudge my selection up by an arrow or two to get a decent position. Control-H again to show the marching ants. Control-D to deselect, and Control-S to file save. Up next, the lasso tools. We're going to select this shell down here and move it up, rotate it, put it in this spot on our final image. I'll point out that you could certainly do the exact same thing we just did with the coral to select the shell. Use a marquee, a rectangular marquee, and then subtract from it. But we'll try a different thing. We'll try to use the lasso tools. So let's zoom in, Z, and draw a marquee around the area we want to zoom in on. Come up to my lasso tool. I'll use the regular lasso tool. Drawing with the regular lasso tool is not easy, especially with a mouse. This is not the best way for selection, but it's a tool worth practicing. With this next selection, what we'll do is we'll use the lasso tool and alternate with the polygonal lasso tool. The trick is that to alternate, you'll press down the Option key on the Mac, the Alt key on Windows, and most importantly, you'll either have the Alt key or the mouse button pressed down. Do not let go of them both at the same time, or else you're done with your selection. If you do, Control-D and start again. All right, let's try it. We'll start by just dragging with the lasso tool. You see it's not easy. I'm not doing a great job of dragging, but I'll drag. Whatever I get will be close enough. It's not great. And when I get to a certain point about here where I'm about to reach a straight line, I'll hold on the Alt key and let go of the mouse button. And now I've got a polygonal lasso tool. Now it will draw me a straight line. I'll click a couple of times to draw a straight line. And I'll cheat a little bit. I'll let this area be more straight. Click and drag and draw some straight lines around there. I'm still holding on the Alt key and clicking with the mouse. Now I'll hold with the mouse here and then it turns back to the lasso tool and I'll draw again freehand with the mouse. Then I'll press down the Alt key, let go of the mouse. Now I can click and drag and draw some more straight lines down here. This area is nearly straight. Click and drag, and again we'll alternate between the Alt key and the mouse button. This is a pretty straight area. I can go all the way over to here, click, 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 click one more time, and now I'll click again and go back to my mouse. Hold the mouse button down, let go of the Alt key, and drag around the edge here. I'm going to get back to the beginning, just let go, and that's it. So as you see, this is not nearly as good a selection as I could have gotten with the magic wand or quick selection tool, but it gives us practice with these tools. Let's go ahead and move this selection up and rotate it. I'll Control-0 to zoom out, and my goal now is again to move it up to the top where the D is and rotate it. So we'll come down here to the selection, we'll hold down the Control key to help us drag and move this object. We'll drag it to about here, and then I want to rotate it. So I'll do Edit, Transform, and Rotate. That creates this bounding box, the box around the selection. When I get my mouse over here outside the bounding box, it turns into a curved arrow. That is what I need for rotation. I can click and drag and eyeball the rotation. If you hold down the Shift key, that will force the rotation within 45-degree increments. That'll take me to 90 degrees. Once you've got that, you can switch to the Move tool and arrow it to where you want it to go. Control D to deselect, and File Save. We'll select our last nautical object, this Nautilus shell here, and move that to position E. For that, we'll use the magnetic lasso tool. Let's zoom in, same way we've done before on the Nautilus. And now I'll come up and select the magnetic lasso tool under the lasso and polygonal lasso tool. So the magnetic lasso tool will look at the contrast between your various areas where you're clicking and try to figure out where the edge is. The settings here control that. We'll leave our default settings, but sometimes you may need to change those to get a better job of finding the contrast. Here we got a decent contrast between the object we're selecting in the background. The tool should work fairly well. I'm going to click here, and as you drag, I'm just dragging by the mouse. I just click one time, and as I drag, the magnetic lasso tool is finding where that edge is. And as long as I come pretty close to the edge, it'll do a good job of finding where it's supposed to be. I missed a little bit there, but that's okay. I'm going to click right inside here on this corner point. That's different than what the book did. I'll click right there to make myself a sharp corner and continue dragging. And when you get back to the beginning, you see the little 0 next to the lasso. Click, and you have selected. So I was pretty rough in my selection here. I missed a spot, actually got an extra bit of selection here. You can certainly leave that if that's what you have in your selection. Don't worry. I'll take that mistake as a chance to show you one thing that the book does not show specifically. What I'll do is I'll use the lasso tool to go and remove that selection. So I'll come over here to my magnetic lasso tool, change it back to the lasso tool, and now I'm going to go and subtract from my selection. In fact, I will zoom in and see that up close. Go back to my lasso tool, and I'll use the Alt key with my lasso tool. Notice it turns into a little minus sign, and I'll just click down here and drag around that area. It doesn't matter if you drag and select something that's not already selected. You're just subtracting those pixels from the selection. I'll do Control 0, and now I'm ready to move this thing where it needs to go. To do that, I'll use the Move tool, be on the keyboard, click and drag up around the letter E, and again, use your arrows to get this thing to the place that you want. Control D to deselect, Control S to save.